Patrice Émery Lumumba led the struggle for the independence of the Congo and became that country's first prime minister. He was brutally murdered just 6 months after independence, but his anti-imperialist stance and political principles made him a symbol of the African and Pan-African struggles throughout the world. In this episode at African Account, I'm going to explore the life of Patrice Lumumba, a man who only wanted what was best for his nation and his people, and yet was subjected to the labels of the Cold War politics. Lumumba was born in 1925 in the village of Onulua in the Kasai province of what was then the Belgian colony of the Congo. He was educated in local missionary schools, both Protestant and Catholic. After completing his studies, Lumumba worked as a clerk in the colonial tax office and then in the post office, where he became an assistant postmaster. As a member of the educated elite, Lumumba began writing and agitating for the Congolese anti-colonial movement and wrote articles for such anti-colonial publications as La Croix de Congo and La Vue de Congolais, as well as being a contributor to the Belgian newspaper L'Africanism. In 1956, Lumumba wrote the book Congo, My Country. Now, this book aimed to address the problems facing the Congo and convey the ideas and aspirations of the Congolese people. Lumumba spoke for many Congolese when he demanded that after interviewing with different sections of the population, the land appropriated by the colonial authorities should be returned to the people of the Congo as it was their birthright. Now, much of Lumumba's book seems to be only demanding reforms to the colonial system, not the end of colonial rule itself. However, it contained progressive views on the status of women in the Congolese society, and it was a powerful indictment of colonialism and envisioned the development of the anti-colonial movement and future independence of the Congo. Lumumba's anti-colonial activities brought him to the attention of the Belgian authorities, which attempted to steer his political development into harmless channels by sending him to Belgium in 1956 on a goodwill visit. Now, in 1958, following proposals for decolonization made by General de Gaulle in the neighboring French Congo, Lumumba and others sent a memorandum to the Governor General of the Belgian Congo demanding independence and African involvement in the discussions being held in Belgium on Congo's future. Now, this demand was followed by the founding of the Congolese National Movement, also known as MNC. It was the first anti-colonial organization to be formed in the Congo that included all of the country's nationality and drew its support from the workers' organizations, not just the elite. Now, the main aim of the MNC was to liberate Congo from colonialism, but it also had visions of a new society based on the needs of the people, and it condemned the exploitation of men by men. Now, Lumumba became the MNC's first president, and under his leadership, it transformed itself into a mass political party and attempted to unite all the anti-colonial forces inside the country. In that same year, Lumumba traveled to Accra, the capital city of Ghana, to attend and speak at the All-African People's Conference that had been convened by Kwame Nkrumah and the government of the newly independent Ghana. Here, Lumumba met Nkrumah and many other African leaders and became a member of the conference steering committee. After the completion of the conference, Lumumba returned to tell a mass rally of 7,000 people in Congo that the MNC entirely agreed with the view of the conference that no African country should remain under foreign domination after 1960, that the independence of the Congolese people in the name of peace cannot be considered any longer by Belgium as a gift, but on the contrary, is a fundamental right that the Congolese people have lost. He explained that the main objective was to organize the masses of the Congolese people for the liquidation of the colonial regime and the exploitation of man by man. On this basis, Lumumba and the MNC worked extremely hard to unite all Congolese into one big anti-colonial movement. Now, in 1959, 7 other anti-colonial organizations inside Congo joined the MNC during its April Congress and passed a resolution demanding the installation of a Congolese government by 1960 as a step towards independence. When rioting broke out in the Congo in November 1959, Lumumba was held responsible, arrested, and sentenced to 6-month imprisonment. But it didn't last long, because he was then released following the demand of all the Congolese organizations attending the Belgian Congolese Roundtable Conference held in the capital of Belgium in January 1960. At the conference, the Belgian government was faced with the united front of all the Congolese anti-colonial organizations led by Lumumba himself. As a result of that meeting, it agreed to grant the Congo independence at the end of June 1960, following elections to be held in that same year. Now, here's the thing. The Belgium and other colonial organizations operating inside the Congo felt threatened by the political orientation of Lumumba and his movement, and they did everything they could to promote and finance other Congolese political organizations, especially those that might create instability or be in a position to demand a breakaway. Now, Belgium even declared a state of emergency and sent heaps of troops reinforcement to the Congo. But even in these circumstances, Lumumba's movement, which campaigned for a united Congo, won the June election and became the largest parliamentary party, winning 37 out of 137 seats. Now, the Belgian government was at first reluctant to accept the result and tried everything it could to encourage other parties to form a government. But on 23rd of June 1960, Lumumba became prime minister. Now, during the Independence Day, King Baudouin of Belgium delivered a speech that offended the majority of the Congolese population. Now, this led Lumumba to deliver what's considered now his famous and fiery independence speech, where he talked about the hardship, brutality, and neglect suffered by the Congolese under the colonial rule.
Nous avons connu les ironies, les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir matin, midi et soir, parce que nous étions des nègres. Qui oubliera qu'à un noir, on disait tu, non certes comme à un ami, mais parce que les voix honorables étaient réservées aux seuls blancs.
His speech was passionate and bitter, and it greatly annoyed the Belgian officials present, including the king himself, but it also sealed his unfortunate fate with the Western world. Only a few days after independence, Belgian army officers provoked a mutiny amongst the 24,000-strong Congolese National Army, and the Belgian government sent troop reinforcement to the Congo. Now, Lumumba obviously demanded that this invasion must be stopped and appealed to the United Nations for support. At the same time, he appointed new African commanders in the military and promoted all the Congolese non-commissioned officers. Despite of all that, the mutiny continued. And whilst Belgian troops were occupying the country, Moise Tshombe, the leader of the Confederations of Tribal Associations of Katanga, declared independence of the copper-rich Katanga region, the most valuable and economically developed part of the Congo. Now, the thing about Tshombe was that he was backed by Belgian government and the big multinational monopolies such as Mining Union of Upper Katanga, which was controlled by French, Belgian, British and US capital. Now, the foreign monopolies completely dominated Congo's economy and felt that their profits were now being threatened by Lumumba and his government. Congo produced over half of Africa's tin and silver, over 85% of its diamonds, and was an important producer of uranium. Now, Lumumba responded by cutting off all diplomatic relations with Belgium and issued an ultimatum demanding that their troops be withdrawn within 12 hours, at the same time appealing to the United Nations for assistance. A UN Security Council resolution unanimously agreed that Belgian troops should be withdrawn and sent in UN forces to evict them. The UN troops failed to fulfill this role. Amongst them was a CIA-sponsored attempt to poison him, which was ordered by US President Eisenhower. Now, a CIA chemist named Sidney Gottlieb, a key person in the plan, devised a poison resembling toothpaste. In September 1960, Gottlieb brought the vial of the poison to the Congo with plans to place it on Lumumba's toothbrush. However, this plot was abandoned allegedly because Larry Devlin, CIA station chief for the Congo, refused permission. Now, in that same month, Joseph Kasavubu, who had been named president of Congo, tried to remove Lumumba from office, to dissolve parliament and to establish a new government. The Lumumba recalled parliament and with its support and full emergency powers, attempted to continue to govern the Congo and free it from foreign intervention. In the midst of this crisis, Mobutu, formerly one of the commanders of Congolese National Army, appointed by Lumumba himself, announced that his force had staged a coup. Mobutu was backed by the CIA and the United States. They feared that Lumumba was believed to be influenced by the Soviet Union and was a hidden communist. This was later to be found untrue, as Lumumba denied being communist, and the first country that Lumumba actually approached for support was the US. But in reality, the Soviet Union was the only country willing to support the country's effort to rid itself of colonial rule. Lumumba discovered that the UN closed all the Congolese airfields and even closed down the capital's radio station in order to prevent aid from the Soviet Union from reaching him and to prevent him from broadcasting. He was put under house arrest and guarded by UN troops. Still, Lumumba decided to fight on for the independence of the Congo. With the aid of his supporters, he managed to escape from house arrest and traveled to Stanleyville in order to establish a new government and a new army. Now, Lumumba's new government began to gain increasing influence throughout Congo, including some areas of Katanga, but he was once again apprehended by Mobutu's loyal troops. Lumumba was first sent on the 3rd of December 1960 to Tilesville military barracks around 100 miles from the capital city of the Congo. He was accompanied by Maurice Paulu and Yusuf Okito, two political associates who had planned to assist him in setting up a new government. They were fed poorly by the prison guards as per Mobutu's orders. In one of his last documented letters, he wrote to Rajeshwar Dayal, the chief of UN operations in Congo, "In a word, we are living amidst absolutely impossible conditions. Moreover, they are against the law." Whilst in prison, he penned a final letter to his wife that contained these famous lines: "The day will come when history will speak. Africa will write its own history. It will be a history of glory and dignity." And knowing that death is imminent and he was about to be murdered, he added in the letter, "I prefer to die with my head unbowed, my faith unshakable, and with profound trust in the destiny of my country." Fearing that he might escape again, Belgian officials engineered his transfer to the breakaway province of Katanga, which was then under Belgian control. Anyone who knew the place knew that it was a death sentence. When Lumumba arrived at Katanga, accompanied by several Belgians, he was bleeding from a severe beating and torture. Later that night, Lumumba was driven to an isolated spot where 3 firing squads had been assembled. Lumumba was killed by a firing squad commanded by a Belgian officer. Lumumba was 35. Since 1961, there had been great speculations about exactly who was responsible for Lumumba's execution and the deaths of his 2 companions, Maurice Polo, a government minister, and Yusuf Okito, vice president of the Congolese Senate. Mobutu and Chumbu were clearly directly involved, but it also appears that the representatives of the US and Belgian governments were involved too, as Lumumba's execution was supervised by Belgian military and police officers. Protests were held in several cities, such as Belgrade, London, and New York. Lumumba came to symbolize the struggle for genuine African unity and independence. Songs were composed about him, and even a university in Russia named after him. In a 1964 speech, Malcolm X called him the greatest man who ever walked the African continent. His death at the age of 35 also exposed the nature of the UN, which did nothing to support the duly elected prime minister and the government of an independent state, but connived with those foreign government and financial interests that wished to intervene in the Congo for their own sordid reasons. As the president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, expressed, Lumumba and his comrades died because they put their faith in the UN and because they refused to allow themselves to be used as puppets or stooges for external interest. Whatever happened and transpired, Lumumba was and is still idolized as a hero by millions of people around the world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And while you're at it, let me know your thoughts and feedback on the life and tragic demise of Patrice Lumumba in the comments below. Thank you for watching and see you next week.